All right, guys, welcome back to the channel, Platinum Pursuit Outdoors. So the question is, just how much rope do you really need for one stick climbing? So when Garrett Prawl, the DIY sportsman, and Carl from Tethered, when they released their one stick climbing method early on last year, one sticking has exploded in the saddle hunting community. And there are a lot of YouTube channels that you can go to that will explain one sticking tutorials and all of that. Matter of fact, in my playlist, I have a video that's called 10 recommended YouTube channels for saddle hunting. Go check that out, and maybe there's a YouTuber that you haven't seen yet. But there are a lot of helpful YouTube videos out there. But in all the videos I've seen, there's one area that was lacking in explanation, and that is, how much rope do I really need? And so when I saw Carl explain his system, I loved it. It was very helpful, but he said two things that stood out to me. One, he uses 40 foot of rope, and two, with 40 foot of rope, his feet can be hunting at like 34 feet. And I'm like, 34 feet? What in the world? You know, I'm not hunting a velociraptor or anything like that. Who goes 34 feet high? And of course, there are people that do that, and I'm just not one of those. Take my man card, do whatever you got to do. I'm not going to hunt 34 feet high. One, I hunt in North Texas, I hunt in Oklahoma, I hunt in Kansas, and in Pennsylvania, we have mature timber that I could climb that high, but I hunt close to buck bedding, which is generally dense and thick. And so I'm just never going to hunt at 34 foot high. I'm never going to hunt at 30 foot high. And very rarely have I hunted at 25 feet high. So I begin to think about all the factors that go into determining your overall length and how much rope you really need for your hunting style. And I'm going to cover 4 areas of measurement that you can use to determine how much rope you need. Really quickly, I'll brief you on it. 1 is the material for your scaffold knot. 2 is your overall height, your body height. 3 is how high are you willing to climb. And then 4 is the tree circumference. The first measurement you need to take to determine your overall length is how much material it takes to tie the scaffold knot. Now, this is a 2-wrap scaffold knot. It's like Garrett Prawls or Carl's and some other people that I've seen do it. Some are using a 3-wrap. Here is my recommendation. Before you tie this knot, you need to get online and search every website you can to make sure you're tying this properly, because if you don't tie this properly, it could be a matter of serious injury, if not death. Because if you don't tie it to the main line and you tie the knot around the tail, it will pull out just by putting pressure on it. So do your homework, do your research, make sure you're being safe. I have 2 wraps on here. Whether you do 2 or 3 wraps, either way, it takes around 15 to 18 inches to tie that knot. So the very first measurement, what I did was I just put 2 feet right off the top, and that would give me 6 inches extra material to determine if I wanted a longer tail or not on my scaffold knot. So your first measurement, just mark down 2 feet for the scaffold knot. The second measurement you need to consider is your overall height. I'm 5'11", 5'11 and a half with my boots on. And so what I did was I just marked another 6 feet of rope that it would take right off the top, because when I get to my climbing height, I hang my tether around the tree, and generally I have it somewhere at the forehead height, maybe a little bit lower depending on the saddle I'm using. And so instead of trying to do 5 foot 8 inches, I just rounded up to 6 foot. This 6 foot measurement, it can cover guys from 5 foot 5 inches all the way to 6 foot 5 inches. Because essentially, if you're 6 foot 5 and your tether's somewhere in your forehead or chin, then obviously the 6 foot marking will cover you. Okay, so the first 2 is the material for the scaffold knot, also your overall height. I rounded up to 6 foot. The third measurement that you need to consider will differ per the person. Okay, I'm never climbing 30 foot high. I'm never climbing 34 feet high. I have a max that I'm willing to climb. I've climbed 25 feet high, and at 25 feet high, I get a little uncomfortable. And so really my range that I hunt on is anywhere from 16, 17 to 22 feet max. And so I just took that 22 foot max and I added it to those other 2 measurements. And then the last measurement, it varies each time you climb the tree, but essentially the last measurement to consider is the circumference of the tree that you're climbing. And you want that circumference at climbing height. So I was climbing yesterday, and I took my measuring tape to determine, what is the biggest size tree that I'm willing to climb. I measured a tree that was 20 inches in diameter. I threw my tape measure around it and I measured the circumference, and it was 5 feet in circumference. As I began to climb, I really struggled to take the stick off and throw the rope around and catch it. I also struggled to straddle the tree and lean down. And so when I got all the way up to 18 feet, the diameter was 15 feet, or 15 inches, excuse me, and the circumference was 4 feet, 4 feet 2 inches. Okay, and so to me, that's about the max that I even want to climb. I'd rather a tree that would have a circumference of 2 or 3 feet, not 4 feet. And so you take the circumference of the biggest tree you're willing to climb. For me, that was about 4 feet. Okay, and then you add that to the mix. 2 feet for the scaffold knot, 6 foot for my height, 22 feet for the highest I'm willing to climb, and then 4 foot added to that for the circumference of the tree, and I'm right at about 34 feet. Now, I want to say this, that I would be willing to, and I might end up doing it here soon, is cut 4 foot off of this rope. The reason being is at 18 feet high, and I took a video so you could see I was at 18 feet high, my feet were, and I have at the end of my rope, what I did was I put blue tape on the end of my rope at every foot. So here you see, starting at the very end, I went 1 foot, I put blue tape. I went 2 foot, blue tape, 3 foot. So I have 6 feet of rope that I got marked off with blue tape. And the reason for that was just to show you how much rope was still on the ground when I was at 18 feet climbing height, or where my foot was. And so in the video that you'll be seeing right now, you can see that I'm at 18 feet where my feet are, and all 6 of these are right at the ground. So there was still about 6 feet of material that was touching the ground. So I could have climbed another 6 feet and my rope just be coming off the ground. So you can take that into consideration. Another thing to add is, even if, let's say, your rope is hanging off the ground and you're climbing and you just need to get up an extra 2 feet, you can still climb that extra 2 feet. And even if the end of your rope is around 2 to 3 feet hanging off the ground, you're good, because when I take my Mad Rock and I latch in, my Mad Rock holding my weight is always about that 5 foot, 5.5 foot mark. Okay, so even if I have the end of my rope hanging off the ground by 2 or 3 feet, when I rappel down, my feet are going to touch the ground before the rope pulls out of the Mad Rock. Hopefully that makes sense, or I said it in a way that communicates it well. So there you go. The 4 measurements you need to know. Just give yourself 2 foot for the scaffold knot, 6 foot for your height, whatever your highest climbing height is, and then whatever the largest circumference tree you're willing to climb. Put those together, and that will determine how much rope you actually need. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, as always, drop them in the comments below. I'll do everything I can to answer them. And until next time, if you haven't already, consider liking and subscribing, and good luck to you.